So looks like former Ukhozi FM's presenter, Mr. Ngizwe, I think that's how you say his name, has declared the king of the Zulus, Misuzulu, as God. Yes, you heard me correctly. There's an article that is out there, and I think it's quite an interesting one. It also does kind of speak to something else I'll get to in a second, but I thought this was interesting and I wanted us to go and look over why does he say so, and is he right? It's just that simple. We're just gonna go over there and see what the man was saying. It's Rick's reality show with the daily Christian commentary videos. Other episodes don't just be down in the pinned comments. You're probably gonna get a video at 10:30, at 3 o'clock exactly, and at 6 o'clock in the evening. And if we do throw a bonus because I didn't post a video yesterday, that's gonna be at 8 o'clock, just because of the videos that I was supposed to make from yesterday. And so I owe you an episode. And so there's an article that the Daily Sun posted this morning, and this is it right here. King Misuzulu is God, and they have him there. I thought that was interesting, and I was like, hey, hi, it looks like there's a lot with this whole thing of God. I think we will keep learning. We'll keep learning. So according to the article, says that in his public clash with Professor Musa over Zulu culture criticism. So they say former Ukhozi FM, I'm reading right above me there, former Ukhozi FM presenter and cultural activist Ngizwe Mchunu says in the Zulu nation, the Zulu king is God and no one should be against him. No, I don't know. Yes, against him maybe might be too detrimental for your health. But does it mean that you cannot question the king? I know in certain cultures you have to speak to the advisors and so forth and all that and plead your position. But that creates a very dangerous idea. Creates the idea where the king, the life of the people are in the hands of the king. Now, of course, when we do is Tagazelos and like the surnames when they read is I think Tagazelo is surnames, right? Like when you are reading the poem of the family. So for those that are outside of Africa, in Africa we tend to have poems for our family surnames. So because one surname might come from another and then another and then another, and so as a result what tends to happen is that those surnames from the origin all the way through tend to have a poem, right? So I know we say that about the king when thinking to say the king owns all of life, but we might want to be careful with that because it creates an environment where of Herod. And if you know the situation between Herod, when Herod started to feel like he was God or started to assume ideas that felt like he was implying that he was God, it created a very nasty position for him. And so I think this is bordering on those ideas. But anyways, let's push on into the article. It says that in Israel, who is also, okay, right above me right there, who is also a nation recognized by the king, Misuzulu, said, according to the Zulu culture, no one should stand against the king, even if that person is right. I don't think the king would want that. Like, yeah, I get the idea, I remember once actually shooting a video with someone. Let me just say with someone because it was a while ago. I can't remember a platform. I once shot a video with someone who was speaking about the viewpoint from a cultural perspective of the king. and all that type of stuff. And we brought up this subject where there are people that might feel like that. That might feel like the king. The king can't be questioned. Okay, I'm not questioning, but the king himself should not want that. And the reason why I say that is because, as human as he may be, he errs, and so therefore, in error, you do not want to make judgments which exceed. There is God, and I've heard Misuzulu acknowledging the idea of there being God. So I think the hierarchy of that should be very clear there. It can get very dicey. That's not something that the king should want. This particular idea that even if he's wrong, he's right. That is a hectic thing. This is after a public spot between King Misuzulu and the cultural expert Professor Musa Ngizwe Mchunu during an Ukhozi Womhlanga on the 13th of September. The king accused Ngizwe of attacking and criticizing the Zulu culture. The article goes to say, it says, I don't know, is this the person he's talking about? Oh, the professor whom they are talking about seems to be a pastor there. And so, okay. There are aspects in our culture that need correction. But anyways, let me read further. It says, after a public Misuzulu warned him to stop attacking the Zulu culture and challenging the professor to a Zulu stick fight. So the king thought, you know what? If you think you're right, come over here. Let's show you how the Zulus do it. There's this fight that the Zulus do with the sticks. Yeah, you're gonna get hurt. It's like boxing, basically. And so he said, if you are all for it, come la. Come la. I want to talk about that particular idea. When a person is in an authority figure, it's so important for him to show his reverence for higher authority, being God, because the subjects, the people under their care, are likely going to follow that. So if the king says something in rebellion to God, okay, not in rebellion to the rest of us, we might not be so important. But if he says something that is in rebellion to God, the subjects will follow that. And that can cause a huge spark. Like I said earlier on, I've heard Misuzulu have reverence for God, right? Even in some of the cultural events that they do, you let someone speak about God, or a preacher or someone like that, and all that. And so, even when he was being put on the throne, there was the priest there and stuff like that. There were people that were saying that is not Zulu culture. Why are they having that? Yeah, but he felt it necessary. And so to be in authority figure, it's so important to have a certain reverence for God, because if not so, it can create blasphemous statements by the subjects, right? So the people that he rules over can build these blasphemous statements and prompt it up to a point where he is now God, like what he is saying here. I do not think that is a very advisable position. Yeah, it's not like it's an open position. It's like, who feels like being God today? Like, do you feel like being God today? Maybe you wanna represent the whole world. Maybe you wanna plan all our individual life and all the details of what we are eating, all of that, and in all. Do you want that? That's what it implies being God, unless you're speaking about the wrong type of a God. When I speak about God, I speak about God in the sense of how he plans meticulously what my life looks like. So if I decide to walk out of that door, God knows that. Yes, when we speak about the king, we speak to him in reverence, definitely. But the king himself would not want that, should not want that. Where do you see that? You see that in the picture of the governor himself in the book of Genesis, Joseph. As they come to him, in that authority, he does not deal unjustly with how they dealt with him. So you see an example of how we ought to see power from a biblical perspective. Is that power from a biblical perspective has this idea that I am under the umbrella and arm of God and function so, rightfully so, by right of God. And I should have that reverence and have that recognition of God being creator of mankind and the value of each individual being as I also would want to be reverenced. Right? Yes, he's king, but you want that in your viewpoint. So I don't know. That sounds odd. It sounds like something that I don't believe the king would want. But that's just me. You know, maybe the Zulu people recognize him as God. They can tell us. Because I was watching, there was a video that Panuel made, sounding exactly like that, by the way. And you are saying we are worshiping the wrong God and what. Maybe I'll go and check the video. I only watched a small part of it and then I skipped. Maybe I'll go back to it now after seeing this article. But we want to be careful with things like that because you want clarity. You, as a person in authority, want clarity that separates you from that divine throne. You see, that I dare not even point. That no equals there. That's not an open position. That it's not an open position. It's not like, hey, who wants to be God today? It doesn't work like that. That throne is occupied for a reason. The rest of us, we are subjects. All mankind function as subjects to that. But I'm very interested in hearing what your guys' thoughts are on that one. When you find yourself in an authority position, you want to be very clear concerning these things. Otherwise, it creates this type of views. That's what I think. I've heard Misuzulu speaking about God. And so I think it is clear in what he has said about God that there is a distinction between him and God. And so even if you were to say, okay, he is a type of a God. No, there is no other God other than God. But to believe that alone, you know, some people believe, okay, there is a God, but then believe they are like a demigod, which is a very false doctrine. It's a very bumpy road type of a doctrine because it easily lands itself in the area of error and falsehood. But y'all tell me, man, is this what Zulu people believe? Y'all believe that the king is God? How is he God if he recognizes God? Or is he in that mode where he recognizes God, but he believes he's some type of a demigod? Y'all clarify for us on that. Because you, as a person in authority, you want clarity. You want a separation between that. And especially if you recognize your own error, you definitely want to be able to spot the difference between those. So Ricky, tell me your thoughts. I'll hear from you down in the comments section.